Physical media man, physical media man, physical media man. What'd you buy? Was it something good?
What's up, guys? Physical Media Man back here again for another Physical Media Man Monday video, and I am bringing back the monthly movie reviews. I got April's monthly movie reviews, and there are a lot. Here is the stack of movies, and this is not counting things that we watched on streaming services. So we watched a lot in April. Before I get started, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, leave feedback, do all that good stuff down below. I'll leave the links to my Instagram page, my Physical Media Man Store Instagram page, my Facebook page for the Physical Media Man / Physical Media Man Store, my Facebook page for non-media related items, the Hodgepodge Garage, my email, my eBay, my Twitter, my Letterboxd account, and my Film Aficionado account where you can follow along with my collection, which is not yet up to date, as well as my wish list of movies I'm after. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. First up, I watched by myself, Baywatch. Doesn't have anything to do with the TV show, really. Just follows a Baywatch lifeguard crew, starring The Rock. This is probably easily one of his worst films, in my opinion. I know it kind of knew it was trying to be funny or not take itself too seriously, but I did not like this one at all. I'm giving it a D. Next up, we watched WrestleMania. I'm going to go ahead and include this. I thought it was one of the better ones in the last few years. Of course, it stunk not having fans. I really enjoyed the Bray Wyatt, John Cena short video thing. That was very good. Some of the matches were better than usual, I thought. So I'm giving it a B-, but it was one of my favorite ones in the last probably 3 years. Next up on Disney Plus, we watched Frozen 2. It starts off where Frozen left off. And they find out more about their family's past, and it was enjoyable. It was probably as enjoyable as the first one, but I'm going to give it a B- as well. Next up, we watched Crazy Rich Asians. This follows a professor who is dating a longtime boyfriend, doesn't realize he's very wealthy, and they're both in New York when the movie starts, and they go over to China, or I think China, Singapore. They go to Singapore for a wedding, and then she kind of she gets to meet his family and realizes how wealthy they are. It's a decent rom-com. One of the supporting actors, she is very funny, but I'm going to give it a C+. I thought it got very good reviews, I thought, and I was expecting a little bit more out of this one, and it just didn't deliver for me. Next up, we watched Best Picture winner from 1983, Terms of Endearment. This follows Shirley MacLaine and her daughter, Deborah Winger, and their neighbor, Jack Nicholson, who was very good in this film. He is a former NASA astronaut in the film. And then Deborah Winger is married to Jeff Daniels, who is an English professor, and they move away from her hometown, and they have marital problems in the film. A very sad film, but very enjoyable in parts. The acting's very good. Jack Nicholson's great. Really, everyone in this film did a great job acting-wise. It's just a kind of a downer movie. I'm going to give it a B. Next up, we watched Aquaman on 4K. So, I'm giving it a C+. Not one of the better DC films. Not as good as Wonder Woman or Shazam, or of course the Batman movies, but that, I guess they aren't considered part of the universe, but still better than some of the other ones. I thought Jason Momoa did a very good job playing Aquaman, but I don't know. it was just too mixed with what it was trying to do, I guess, but it wasn't bad. Next up, which was worse, and we watched this next night, we got Men in Black International. Doesn't have anything to do with the first three, really. Stars Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson. I thought they were okay. It wasn't awful, but it was enjoyable in parts, but not a very good film. Giving it a C. So yeah, I definitely wouldn't buy this one unless you had the other ones and had to complete the collection. Next up, we watched on Netflix, Netflix original film, The Highwaymen, starring Kevin Costner and Woody Harrelson, and they are cops or former Texas Rangers who try to hunt down Bonnie and Clyde. Very good movie. Enjoyed it quite a bit. I didn't really know anything about Bonnie and Clyde. Just knew of them, of course. Giving it a B-. I thought it was very enjoyable. Next up was a childhood favorite of mine. We got Little Giants, starring Rick Moranis and Ed O'Neill, who were brothers in the film. Ed O'Neill was a Heisman Trophy winner, and his brother wasn't very athletic, but he has a daughter who doesn't make Ed O'Neill's Pee Wee football team, but she's the best player, so he forms up the Little Giants to take them on, and it's all the misfits that didn't make the team. Very enjoyable movie, even better than I remembered it. I'm giving it an A-. Next up, we watched, and I finished by myself, we got Standing in the Shadows of Motown. We've been to the Motown Museum in Detroit, Hitsville, USA. Really enjoyed it. Thought I was going to like this better. So this is all about the Funk Brothers, who were like the backing band for a ton of hits. So here on the front it says they played on more #1 records than the Beatles, the Beach Boys, the Rolling Stones, and Elvis Presley combined. So, but it splits like in between kind of a documentary, and then they do live recordings or showings of different musicians, including Ben Harper, Shaka Khan, I think, and some other people singing songs that they perform with that singer. I just thought it was going to be better. I don't know. I'm giving it a C-. It, in my opinion, just didn't know what it wanted to do. Next up, we watched Blast from the Past with Brendan Fraser and Alicia Silverstone. This is a first-time watch. Basically, everything so far besides Little Giants has been a first-time watch. So this follows Adam and Eve. So Brendan Fraser, he is born in a bomb shelter. The movie starts out with Christopher Walken, who's a scientist, and his wife. They're having a dinner party, and then something happens where they go to their bomb shelter, and they stay there for like 30 years or something. So then he comes out, Brendan Fraser does. So he's never been outside of the bomb shelter because he was born there, and so he's figuring things out for the first time, and he meets Alicia Silverstone, and it's just a very enjoyable film. I like this one a lot, so giving it a B. Then we started, which of course we had watched, the Batman, or the Dark Knight trilogy. So it started off with Batman Begins, which is like the backstory of Batman and how he becomes Batman. I'm giving it a B. And then the next night we watched The Dark Knight, which of course he is Batman by the start of this movie, and he faces the Joker. Very great film, giving it an A+. And we also watched The Dark Knight Rises at some point. I'm going to give it an A-. I really enjoy that one too, even though people don't like it as much as The Dark Knight, obviously. But I think it's kind of unrated in the superhero movies. A lot of people expected it to be as good as The Dark Knight for some reason, and it just wasn't. But it's still really good. Next up, we watched the Kino Lorber release of The Favor. So this is about I don't know who these actresses, who's who here. All right, let's see here. It says on the back. So Kathy, played by Harley Jane Kozak, fantasizes about making love to her hunky ex-boyfriend Tom Wall, Tom, played by Ken Wall, because she never got to in high school. They were high school sweethearts, but never made love. So then she's married to Bill Pullman, who's great in this movie, by the way. I bought this because Brad Pitt's in it. So then she has her open-minded best friend try to make love with Tom. So that's the favor. And then, of course, all problems break because of that. But it was okay. Nothing great. Given in the C. And then next up, I watched Ladies and Gentlemen, My Name is Paul Heyman. Really enjoyed this documentary. I knew somewhat about Paul Heyman and his time in ECW and his time with WWE, WWF with Brock Lesnar, but didn't know a whole lot about how he got into wrestling and his time with WCW, and I thought it was really enjoyable. I'm giving this one a B+, and it's one of the better, and WWE does a great job with these documentary releases, and this was one of my favorite ones. I think it makes them better when you don't know too much about either the manager or the tag team or the professional wrestler. Next up, we watched Tombstone, which is an amazing film. I'm giving this one an A+. We got Kurt Russell as Wyatt Earp, and Sam Elliott, and not sure who plays it. The other guy plays his brother. He's well known too. And Val Kilmer plays Doc Holliday, who's great in this film. That very enjoyable movie. I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. One of my favorite westerns. We finished off, which would have been on the previous month's movie reviews, but I haven't done those. If you have any interest in me going back a few months and doing movie reviews for those months, let me know. Again, I might be kind of rusty on this because I haven't done them in a few months. But we finished up the Beverly Hills Cop trilogy with Beverly Hills Cop 3. So this follows Axel Foley again. He's chasing. It's from his. It starts out with his boss from the first few being murdered in Detroit, but it follows back to Beverly Hills. So he goes to Beverly Hills to figure out what's going on. A lot of it takes place at amusement park. This is one of the better third entries in a film, in my opinion. I'm giving it a C+. Not as good as the first two, but for a third movie in a trilogy, it's very good. Next up was I also watched Chuck and Tito, the 30 for 30 on them, Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz. Not a huge UFC fan, but I do occasionally watch with friends. I remember when Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz were fighting, but I don't think I ever watched any of their fights live. I didn't really know anything about it. So this was one of my more favorite 30 for 30s. I'm going to give it a B. I recommend it. It was really neat how they showed how the UFC kind of formed, and it showed some of the very early fights because it had like all sorts of fighters, not just MMA fighters, because it was just starting out. So there were sumo wrestlers and kickboxers and all sorts of people in this organization to begin with. So it was kind of interesting just learning about the history of how UFC formed. So I highly recommend that one. And then next up, we watched one that I was excited about, and I only heard good things about it, Dark City. This is a noir film. I didn't really care for it a lot. I don't know if I just wasn't in the right mood to watch it. So this guy wakes up, and there's someone murdered in his room, but he doesn't he doesn't remember anything. I won't go into too much detail. It might be better upon a second watch, but I'm giving it a C. Next up, I watched another WWE documentary, Bret Hart. The best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. I knew quite a bit about Bret Hart going into this, so I think maybe that's why I didn't like this one as much. I am a pretty big fan of his from watching other documentaries and things, because he didn't wrestle when I was watching, but I'm going to give it a C+. Next up, we watched 8 Heads in a Body Bag, or in a Duffel Bag, starring Joe Pesci. I kind of wanted to watch, I probably have 5 or 6 movies that have Twilight Time Blu Ray releases, and they still have a sale going on. I thought about upgrading some. This one was $8.95. So I'm kind of on the fence on it after watching it, but I wanted to watch all the ones that we had to see if I wanted to upgrade or not. So this one follows Joe Pesci, who's in the mafia or mob, and he has this duffel bag with 8 heads in it, but he's got to deliver them to someone. So he's on a flight, and the bags get switched, so he no longer has his 8 heads in a duffel bag, and he has to get them to, he has to find where they're at to get them to where they're supposed to go, and someone else obviously has the duffel bag with the heads in it, so it causes all sorts of problems, but Joe Pesci is great in this. I really enjoyed this one, giving it a B-. And then we started the Divergent series on 4K. How would I? So it's a future world, and society's divided into 5 distinct factions. So, and you get a pick. So you grew up in a faction because of your parents, but then I don't know I think it was your 18th birthday or 16th birthday or something. You get tested, and it tells you what faction you should be in. But you still get, so you can either go with whatever that test result was, or you can decide what faction you want to go into. So you could go into whatever faction you wanted. But Shailene Woodley's character is Divergent, and that means that she didn't result in a certain faction. She has aspects of all of the factions in her. So that's bad because that makes her targeted, and they want to kill all these divergents is what they call them. So I don't want to go into too much more detail than that. That might have been too much anyway, but it was enjoyable. These movies, in my opinion, are slightly better than the Maze Runner movies and not as good as the Hunger Game movies, which I read the Hunger Game books, and I haven't watched the last one, which I need to do, but that's kind of what I would compare them to. They're similar to both series, though. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. We also watched Insurgent, where it takes off where Divergent left off. I don't want to go into any detail on that because that would ruin Divergent. I'm going to give it a B- though. And also in May, which is now, even though this is the April reviews, we watched Allegiant. I'm going to go ahead and give that a C+. It's not as good as the first 2, so they gradually got worse, in my opinion. All right. Next up, we watched one of my very few Arrow releases. We got Weird Science, which is a John Hughes film. Great movie. So these 2 high school, I would say geeks, basically make this female who's very attractive, and it makes everyone else jealous of them, and they have trouble with girls, and it really helps them out. And they become more comfortable with girls, and it makes them more confident. So just a great 80s classic film. I'm giving it an A+. Highly recommend if you haven't watched it somehow. We also watched Onward on Disney Plus. I'm going to give it a B. Can't remember who all did. Oh, Tom Holland and another famous actor. Chris Pratt do the voices of the 2 main characters. Very great Pixar film. Giving it a B, and it's like, I wouldn't say futuristic, but they're in a place where there used to be magic, but there's no longer magic because things were invented. And yeah, I don't want to, it's hard to talk about this movie without ruining it, so I would just recommend it. Go watch it. And we watched The Mark of Zorro, which is considered the best adaptation of the Zorro legend, or the finest telling, and I would agree with that. I think it did a great job. It's like it's a 1940 black and white film, which they do a great job of telling the story of Zorro. It's not as action-packed as the Antonio Banderas films, but it's a better film. I'm going to give it a B. So I would recommend this one, and I think we only paid about $8 or $9 for it during one of the Kino sales. So if you're a fan of Zorro, I would definitely check that out. Next up, I watched a Dollar Tree film, a documentary on Norman Lear, just another version of you. I didn't know anything about him going in, and really enjoyed this one. PBS did a great job with it. I'm giving it a B+. One of the better documentaries I've ever watched. It says, largely responsible for the explosion of bold American television in the 1970s, writer-producer Norman Lear's name is synonymous with the sitcom. From his turbulent childhood and early career with his groundbreaking TV success, All in the Family, The Jeffersons, Good Times and Maude, and social activism, Lear proved that social change was possible through an unlikely prism, laughter, and created some of the greatest moments in television history. So this one was very good. If you're able to find it at a Dollar Tree, I'd definitely pick it up. And then finished off with two more titles here. We got Diamond Dallas Page, Positively Living. Again, I didn't watch wrestling when this was going on, unfortunately, with the WCW. I think I might have seen him when he came to WWE when WWE bought WCW. But I'm familiar with Diamond Dallas Page. Of course, I really like Ready to Rumble. He's one of the main characters in that. I don't know. I just thought this one was going to be better, so I'm giving it a B-. And lastly, in April, we watched The Disaster Artist, which stars James Franco, Seth Rogen, and Dave Franco, and James Franco directed. It's about The Room and Tommy Wiseau, who made The Room and starred and directed and produced and everything. James Franco did a great job portraying him. He nailed the voice and everything. I still haven't watched The Room. I'm hoping to do that sometime. This is a very good film, giving it a B. So that's everything we watched in the month of April. If you enjoyed this, please let me know down below. This is not something I do all the time, so still not as good at it as I am with the unboxings and that sort of thing. So hope you guys enjoyed this. If you want to keep seeing videos like this, please let me know down below. If you have any ideas for future videos, since I haven't been able to hunt as much, which I actually was able to today, 2 Goodwills, 2 Dollar Trees, and I did a Facebook Marketplace deal this week as well, which was no contact. So hope you guys enjoyed this. If you haven't yet done so, make sure to subscribe down below. So this is Physical Media Man signing off. Physical Media will never die.
Physical Media Man. Physical Media Man. Physical Media Man.